Today, my task is to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Vashawn Ray is associate professor of sociology and director of the Lab for Applied Social Science Research at the University of Maryland. He's also co-editor of Context magazine in sociology for the public.
So what we aimed to know was how are individuals doing family? Family is difficult. I mean, we just seen a video about dreams, and I don't know about you, but oftentimes when we have children, there are certain things we want to do, certain dreams we want to pursue that get put on hold for them. But I don't know about you, every time I look at my kids, I think that it's well worth it. But at the same time, there are things that we can be doing to actually potentially improve the relationship that we have with our children and the relationship that we have with our spouses. What this particular graph shows is that mothers and fathers view parenting as a positive experience, but not as much as we might expect. Less than 60% of mothers and fathers say parenting is important for their identity. They say that parenting is rewarding, and they say that parenting is enjoyable. Less than 60%.
So algo que yo quiero que ustedes entiendan es que es menos del 60%, se sienten excitados por ser, y es menos del 60%.
So what this graph tells me is that parenting is hard, and at times it's downright excruciating in terms of what we have to do every day. And what research actually shows, you all are going to love this. When you're having kids that are our kids' ages, our life expectancy actually decreases. Meaning at this point, it's projected we're going to live less or live shorter lives than other people. But when we get older and our kids get grown and they turn out well, our life expectancy then goes through the roof because we feel like that we've done something that was positive for our family and positive for society. Men actually participate a lot more in the family than people think. Fed and ate meals, over 60% for all men, over 70% for white and black men. Bathed and dressed their children daily, play with children daily. That's nearly 75% for all groups. Read to children. Now, this is where we see a big gap. Well, less than 50% of men, of fathers, report reading to their children daily. So it's clear that we're playing with our kids. We're not always reading with our kids. So this is one of the things that we can do. You could have your child select a book and you say, we're going to read a short book before you go to bed. It doesn't have to be every day, but once a week. Why? Because it becomes important for our children to see us reading and engaging in certain types of educational activities. And so this is what becomes key, though, for men, is that in the book, one of the things that we really highlight is who's had a positive and a negative experience on the family. If you look up here, this big blue part of this pie chart shows that a female immediate family member, which is mostly a mother, has had a positive effect on people's lives. These were 132, again, Hispanic, white, and black individuals who we explored their lives with families around the country. Now, let's compare this graph with this graph. What you see on this graph, the question asks, which family member has had a negative effect on your life? 56% of the participants in our study reported that a male immediate family member, who was mostly a father or grandfather, actually had a negative impact on their life. So the question becomes, why do we see this? Well, part of it has to do with that at times, as men, as fathers, we miss out on important monumental moments in our children's lives. Oftentimes because we're working, that's one part of it. But the other part why this negative view comes up is because we're oftentimes viewed as the disciplinarian. So when we're disciplining our children, that oftentimes has a lasting effect on what's going on with our children, particularly if we engage in certain types of physical punishment to reprimand our children.
Como el disciplinario, eso no es algo positivo.
Okay, so now let's get to the crutch of why we've seen different hands being raised a little while ago when we were talking about different types of household activities. Just let me quickly summarize. We're going to summarize these quickly, Jennifer, so I can get through all these. Is what you see the purple lines. The purple lines are women. The blue lines are men. For every single activity in the household, women are doing more. Household activities, all of them. Housework, huge gap. Food prep, 70% of women are cooking food compared to only 40% of men. The only thing men do more than women is lawn and garden care. And men, we have to admit, like, we're not doing that every single day. You know what I mean? We get out, we mow the grass once a week. We do something outside. Maybe sometimes we go outside for an extra day and act like we're doing something outside. But oftentimes, women are primarily doing things in the household. How much does it equate to? It equates to essentially about a 40-minute gap every single day in terms of what women are doing in the house compared to what men are doing in the house. The key point is that men and women not only are engaging in different types of activities at different rates in the house, but they also perceive that they're contributing differently. So if you look at this graph, just quickly, I'll just kind of tell you what it shows. What it shows is that men are perceiving that they do much more in the house than they might actually be doing. And that is consistent across the board. And how do we know that's consistent? It's consistent because when you then ask, and I'll just summarize this part, let Jennifer summarize it, don't worry, because we want to get through this. When men are then asked specifically who does what, men actually still report that women do more. So what that means is that men are saying, I do half, and then when you ask them who does what, then they say women do more. Like, you can't have it both ways. So it suggests that in our minds as men, as fathers, we really think we're doing a whole lot more than we actually are. So this is the whole point here, is that while, say, 40, 50 years ago, men doing less in the house made sense, in 2018, it simply doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? It doesn't make sense because about 67 or about 2/3 of every single family in America could not make it if both parents did not work outside of the home. That is a huge difference than it was 40 years ago. The issue, though, is that most men haven't made the shift with that change. So now what we have is women doing what we call the second shift, where women go to work and then they come home and still do everything. So as men, we have to make sure that we contribute more in the house by being a caregiver and a houseworker, because we're expecting our wives to do more, then we also have to do more. So this is part of the issue. For women, as husbands' income increases, so as men make more money, women participate more in the home. Okay? That makes sense. Because it suggests that one person's doing slightly more, one person needs to contribute the other way. But for men, you know, again, we got this issue. For men, as wives' income increases, husbands actually participate less in the home. And part of that has to do with the fact that the provider role, providing outside of the home, is so linked to our identity as fathers, husbands, and men that sometimes we don't exactly know what to do when we can't necessarily fully fulfill that role. So all I'll really, let me end with 3 slides. I'm going to talk about why our participation matters and how we actually evaluate our participation. Okay, that's how we're going to close. This is the big thing. Father's involvement increases kids' grades.
So entre más el varón o el hombre del hogar participe con los niños mejoran sus notas.
So everyone here, particularly the fathers, since we're highlighting fathers today, you all should give yourselves a round of applause right now for being here. Seriously, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Like, your kids seeing you here and you sitting here with your kids makes a big difference. You should check in with their teachers in 2 weeks and ask them, have they started doing better? Has their behavior improved, even if they're already great students? Because by your kids seeing you invest in education, they realize the investment. And why is that key? I just want you to look at this graph here. This is college. This is graduate school. Look at how much more likely. This is the percentage of kids who went to college and who went to graduate school that said that their fathers volunteered at school. What does this mean as it relates to men make a difference? Men, if we really want to make a difference, I get going after that almighty dollar. Believe me, I get it. And we can't keep the lights on. We can't pay the rent and the mortgage unless we work. But we are never going to get those days, minutes, and seconds back with our kids if we're not present.